On the outskirts of São Paulo, in a city called Mogi das Cruzes, there is a particular kind of light in the late afternoon, the kind that turns the red dirt fields amber and makes everything feel both ordinary and charged with possibility. It was here, on February 5th, 19... In March 2009, a 17-year-old stepped onto a professional pitch for Santos FC. He was slight in build, quick in movement, and almost immediately he looked like he belonged somewhere else, somewhere further along in the story. His rise was not gradual. Within his first full seasons, it became clear that Santos had not simply found a good young player. They had found something rarer. Neymar's dribbling carried a quality that was difficult to describe technically. It was as much improvisation as it was skill, as much instinct as it was training. He would score 136 goals for the club across 6 seasons, but the goals were often secondary to the manner in which they arrived. In 2011, Santos won the Copa Libertadores, the most prestigious club competition in South American football, for the first time since the era of Pelé, decades earlier. The comparison, which had been murmured in Brazilian football circles for a year or two, began to be spoken aloud. Neymar was also named South American Footballer of the Year in both 2011 and 2012. He won 3 consecutive Campeonato Paulista titles with the club. Overtures came from Europe. Real Madrid expressed interest. Chelsea made approaches. Neymar stayed. There was something unfinished in Brazil, some chapter that needed completing before the next one could begin. The Pelé comparisons never quite disappeared, even as Neymar himself seemed wary of them. Pelé was a historical weight, a benchmark so high it could become a burden rather than a tribute. Neymar understood this even then. He continued to play, inventive, joyful, occasionally infuriating, on the shores of the Atlantic coast, in the city where Brazilian football had once written one of its greatest stories. In the summer of 2013, Neymar signed with FC Barcelona for a reported fee of €57 million. The move was complex. The true financial details would later become a matter of legal dispute, but the sporting reality was simpler. He was now playing for one of the most demanding clubs in the world, in a league that had no equivalent for difficulty and scrutiny. His first season was an adjustment. Then came the alignment. Alongside Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, Neymar formed part of an attacking trio that became known as MSN, and that combination, in its peak seasons, was as fluid and relentless as any front line in the modern era of the game. In 2015, Barcelona won the UEFA Champions League. In the final, held in Berlin, Neymar scored. He also wept, not from grief, but from the particular exhaustion and relief that comes from achieving something you have worked toward for years. He would score 105 goals in 186 appearances for Barcelona. He won 2 La Liga titles and 3 Copa del Rey trophies. But there were also moments of personal significance beyond club football. In 2016, at the Rio de Janeiro Olympics, Brazil won the gold medal in football for the first time. In the final, on home soil, Neymar scored the decisive penalty. The tears on the pitch that evening were different from those in Berlin, more intimate, more complex. This was his country, his people. The weight of expectation that Brazilian football carries had, for one moment, been transformed into something lighter. The 2014 World Cup, by contrast, had ended in a kind of rupture. In the quarter-final against Colombia, Neymar suffered a fractured vertebra and was ruled out of the tournament. Brazil, without him in the semi-final, lost 7-1 against Germany. It was an outcome so extreme, it took time to fully absorb. a sporting collapse that became part of national memory. Neymar watched from the stands. In August 2017, Paris Saint-Germain triggered Neymar's release clause. The fee was €222 million, a figure so large it altered the economics of world football, at least temporarily. No player had ever been purchased for that sum. The number carried with it a particular pressure that everything Neymar did from that point forward would be measured against it. In Paris, he was the project, the player around whom PSG intended to build their first Champions League title. He won 4 Ligue 1 championships. He scored 118 goals in 173 appearances, becoming the club's all-time leading scorer. In isolated moments, he was the best player on the pitch in Europe. But the injuries came. A broken metatarsal in 2018, recurring ankle problems that would pull him out of key matches, sometimes for months. The pattern was difficult. Bursts of brilliance interrupted by absences that disrupted both the club's ambitions and his own momentum. The 2018 World Cup brought criticism. His reactions to fouls, the rolling, the theatrics, were widely mocked, and the scrutiny was not entirely unwarranted. Brazil exited to Belgium in the quarter-finals. In 2020, PSG reached the Champions League final. They lost to Bayern Munich. Neymar, who had been exceptional across the tournament, was not enough. At the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, he was, for much of the tournament, the most dangerous player on the pitch. He scored against Croatia in the quarter-final. Brazil lost on penalties. The image of Neymar in tears at full time, composed but clearly shattered, was one of the defining images of that tournament. The pursuit of a World Cup, the thing he had spent his career building toward, had again receded. His relationship with Kylian Mbappé at PSG was layered, sometimes collaborative, sometimes difficult, a dynamic that reflected the complexity of 2 elite players sharing the same space. In August 2023, Neymar moved to Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. 3 months later, in November, he tore his anterior cruciate ligament. He would miss nearly a full year of football. His appearances for Al Hilal were limited, a fraction of what had been anticipated when he arrived. The injuries that had shadowed his time in Paris followed him into this new chapter. The body, after decades of professional football at the highest intensity, was making its own demands. Then, in early 2025, he returned to Santos FC, the club where it had all begun. The symbolism was unmistakable. The same pitch, the same colors, the same city where, as a teenager, he had first suggested what he might become. For Brazil, Neymar scored 79 international goals, third on the all-time list of the country's scorers. Across his career, he demonstrated a dribbling ability that placed him among the most technically gifted players of his generation, and arguably any generation. The creativity, the close control, the capacity to change direction at speed, these were not manufactured through training alone. They were, to a significant degree, natural. The honest accounting of his career holds both things at once: what was achieved, the trophies, the records, the moments of genuine brilliance, and what was not: a World Cup, a Champions League, the sustained dominance that his talent, at its peak, had made seem possible. In the city where the afternoon light turns the fields amber, a boy had once begun. What followed was complicated, luminous, and incomplete in the ways that the most interesting lives often are.